mammals, fish. And this got the attention of President Clinton, and he said, what is it that you fishermen want? And we said, we don't want to be fined for civil disobedience, we're desperate, and also we want ecosystem studies. We want the scientists to connect the dots between the seabirds, the marine mammals, the fish, the beaches. What happened to Prince William Sound? Those ecosystem studies began in 1994, really too late for our trial. They didn't get completed until about 2004. I'm talking about published papers now. And those studies show, sure enough, the oil that's remaining on our beaches is still causing harm.
Let me see. You have brought a little jar. This is Exxon Valdez oil, Smith Island, Prince William Sound. This is 1 year ago.
This is not July 2nd last year, not even a year.
This is astounding.
That's what we think, too. I take children out on the beaches now who were born after the spill and say, this is your legacy.
It's just covered in oil.
The oil specifically is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs. This is actually coming out the tailpipes of our automobiles. It's the fine soot. That's kind of the code word for it. And this is linked with genetic harm, not only in animals, but in people as well. Respiratory harm, reproductive impairment, cancers. Very low levels of this oil, these PAHs, cause incredible harm.
You've said that this is not just an environmental disaster, but a crisis in democracy.
It is a democracy crisis. The question we started asking as our lawsuit went on and on and on, and we didn't get paid, was how did corporations get this big, where they can manipulate the legal system, the political system? What happened here? And I thought that was a really good question, so I went to answer it. And that became the final chapter of Not One Drop. And I learned from other people's work that, there's actually two ways to amend the Constitution. One is formally through people-made law, which we've done 27 times, and one is informally through what Thomas Jefferson called the engine of consolidation, the federal judiciary, the Supreme Court. And in 1886, the Supreme Court made sort of a seminal decision where it granted a railroad corporation equal protection under the 14th Amendment, which is, of course, the Civil Rights Amendment for due process and equal protection for African-American men. For the first 40 years after that passed, there were 307 lawsuits brought. 19 by African-American men, the rest by corporations. And at that point, when the 14th Amendment passed to corporations, this thing called a corporate person arose. And that corporate person, in the eyes of the law, is able to access our rights, human rights, the Bill of Rights, constitutional protections. This is wrong. The word corporation never appears in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. This is how we've lost freedom of speech. We as people still have the First Amendment, but so do corporations. Free speech equals money. Those with more money have more speech. Pretty simple. So I began to understand that the legal system is broken. The election process is broken, all because of the same reason, this corporate personhood.
Where has Sarah Palin, the governor, stood on the Exxon case?
She has never seen an oiled beach. She's been protected from that. She stood with the fishermen at the Supreme Court. We had a hearing and talked, but it's easy to stand with people. It's a whole nother thing to stand against the corporations, and we haven't seen that. We haven't seen her asking Exxon, for example, to pay it $92 million outstanding to clean up that oil that's still on our beaches.
1994, the jury rules you get $5 billion. What happened?
The jury, it took 3 weeks to come up with that decision. They didn't just pull it out of the air. The jury asked the question, how do we hold a corporation this large accountable to people? And the jury decided they had to tie profit to punishment. So at the time, 1994, that was 1 year's net profit for Exxon, $5 billion. And that way you can hold, big corporation, big punishment. What the Supreme Court did was they severed that link, and they instead linked profit to damages. Well, there's a problem. We are still incurring ongoing damages in Prince William Sound because we're not fishing herring, for example. So we didn't get all of our damages. Meanwhile, this 1-to-1 ratio of punitive to damages is a problem now for everybody in America. We all lost our ability to hold big corporations accountable. This was the threat of unlimited liability. Just the mere threat held these corporations accountable to consumer safety laws, public health laws, environmental protection laws. We've lost that now. What we need is Congress to, what I call, overturn this by taking up the issue of punitive damages and asking the question, how do we hold these large corporations accountable?
What kind of relief have you gotten at this point, Ricky Ott? What have your communities gotten? What has ExxonMobil paid out?
We have gotten 10 cents on the dollar. Most of my friends have been able to claim to receive 7 to 10% of what they have actually lost. At this point in time, 20 years later, I even have some friends whose individual share of that punitive damage award is not, it's less than what they will have to pay their bankruptcy lawyer.
Are you concerned about another spill 20 years later?
I am forever concerned about another spill. It's not just U.S. waters. I just came back from South Korea where they had a big spill a year ago. The problem is that the oil companies, despite all the safety precautions, we now will have double hull tankers, and there's a number of other precautions, mostly all citizen-driven. Oil still gets away. We can't clean up an ice, so we have no business drilling offshore in the Arctic. Once oil spills on land, we have no way to clean it up. So this whole Alberta tar sands is nonsense. It's making a big mess. We have no way to clean
Where we
up
get
these
much
spills.
of our oil, the Alberta tar sands.
Well, I think tar sands projects should be shut down. There should be a moratorium worldwide. This is way too energy intensive. It's taking water. I mean, come on, water's got to be more valuable than oil. We're squandering our gas and our water to get out this sticky substance that emits 3 times as much greenhouse gases than conventional crude.
Ricky Ott, I want to thank you for being with us. She has written the book, Not One Drop, Betrayal and Courage in the Wake of the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill. I thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and I'm advocating the 28th Amendment to strip corporations of human rights. Thank you.
And that does it for our show. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Shufo Dokadus, Aaron Mate, Angelique Kamet, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Massoud, Robbie Karen. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.